The massive crystalline spaceport loomed before the Earth diplomatic vessel as it approached the capital world of the Stellar Empire. Inside the ship, Ambassador James Walker stood at the viewing window, straightening his simple black tie. Unlike other diplomats who preferred elaborate costumes, he believed in the power of simplicity. The ship's captain turned to him. "Are you sure about this, Ambassador? The Empire isn't known for their warmth toward newcomers." James smiled. "The best conversations often start with skepticism, Captain." The landing was smooth, but the welcome was anything but warm. Tall, silver-skinned beings lined the crystal pathway, their iridescent robes shimmering under the light of 3 suns. Their faces showed no emotion, but their posture screamed disapproval. The head of the welcome party, Lord Stone, stepped forward. His height made James feel like a child, but the human diplomat maintained his calm smile. "Ambassador Walker, you are smaller than we expected." "Good things often come in small packages, Lord Stone," James replied, his voice carrying clearly across the platform. Several alien diplomats shifted uncomfortably at his casual tone. The procession to the palace was deliberately slow, designed to showcase the Empire's grandeur. Towers of living crystal stretched toward the sky, their surfaces changing colors with the movement of the crowds within. Flying vehicles darted between buildings like schools of exotic fish. James noticed everything but showed no sign of being overwhelmed. His training had prepared him for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare anyone for the sight of Princess Aurora's entrance. She descended the grand staircase, her skin glowing with an inner light that made the silver tone of her people look like precious metal. Her eyes, triple-lidded and deep purple, fixed on James with unconcealed disdain. "So," her voice rang through the hall, "Earth sends us a single diplomat. How efficient." The word dripped with sarcasm. James bowed, the exact depth required by protocol, not an inch more or less. "Your Highness honors us with your presence. I bring greetings from Earth." Earth. She said the word like it was a curious specimen. The planet that achieved faster-than-light travel barely 50 years ago, now seeking equal standing with an empire that spans 3 galaxies. The court waited for James to stumble, to show embarrassment or anger. Instead, he smiled. 50 years is indeed brief, Your Highness. It speaks to our quick learning curve." Princess Aurora's third eyelid flickered, a sign of surprise that James had noted in his studies. "You speak boldly for a representative of such a young species." "Youth has its advantages, Your Highness. We haven't had time to convince ourselves of what's impossible." A murmur ran through the court. No one spoke to the princess this way. Her reputation for reducing diplomats to stuttering messes was legendary. Yet here stood this human, calm as still water. "Very well," she said, rising to her full height. "Since you're so confident, Ambassador Walker, perhaps you'd care to demonstrate your species' capabilities. Tomorrow you will present Earth's case for alliance to the full court." "I would be honored," James replied, his smile unchanged. "Though I wonder if we might first discuss the trade dispute between the crystalline worlds and the gas giant colonies. I have some thoughts that might interest you." The princess's 3 eyes widened slightly. That dispute had been a thorn in the Empire's side for centuries. "You presume much, Ambassador." "Not presumption, Your Highness. Preparation." For the first time in living memory, Princess Aurora was silent for a full 3 seconds. The court held its breath. Then, incredibly, the corner of her mouth twitched upward. "Perhaps," she said finally, "tomorrow's presentation will be more interesting than I expected." As James was led to his quarters, he could feel the princess's gaze following him. The first move had been made. Now, the real game would begin. Lord Stone walked beside him. "You've caused quite a stir, Ambassador." "Have I?" James asked innocently. "I was just being myself. And that, as any student of human history could tell you, was exactly the plan." The morning light filtering through the crystal palace walls cast rainbow patterns across James's desk as he reviewed his notes. The trade dispute between the crystalline worlds and the gas giant colonies had stumped the Empire's finest minds for 3 centuries. Now, Princess Aurora had given him 3 days to solve it. Impossible, Lord Stone had told him. The crystalline people refuse to share mining rights, and the gas giants won't accept restricted access to the meteor belts. It's a deadlock. James spread out the historical documents before him. Where others saw an unsolvable puzzle, he saw patterns. The answer wasn't in the official records. It was in the cultural traditions of both species. A soft chime announced Princess Aurora's arrival. She glided into the room, her silver skin shimmering. "I trust you're finding the challenge adequate." Her tone suggested she expected to find him overwhelmed. "Fascinating, actually," James replied, not looking up immediately. "Did you know that both species share an ancient legend about starstones?" The princess's third eyelid flickered. "What does that have to do with mining rights?" "Everything." James finally met her gaze. "Both cultures believe these stones are sacred. The crystalline people think they're fragments of their first world. The gas giants believe they're pieces of their ancestral navigation charts." "These are children's tales," Aurora dismissed, but James noticed she moved closer to see his notes. "Children's tales often hold the deepest truths, Your Highness. Look here." He pointed to 2 star maps. "The meteor belts they're fighting over. They form a perfect match to both species' sacred patterns." For the first time, the princess leaned over his shoulder, her presence making the air tingle with static electricity. "Continue," she commanded, but her voice held genuine curiosity. "Instead of dividing the belts by territory, we divide them by purpose. The crystalline people get exclusive rights to fragments matching their sacred patterns. The gas giants get priority access to those matching their ancestral charts. Both sides preserve their cultural heritage." Aurora studied the proposal, her triple-lidded eyes narrowing. "It's not entirely foolish, but they'll never agree to meet and discuss it." James smiled. "They don't need to meet. Not yet. We start with symbolic exchanges. Each side sends the other examples of their art featuring the starstones. They'll discover their shared reverence naturally." "You're suggesting we manipulate them into peace." The princess sounded more impressed than offended. "I prefer to think of it as helping them discover common ground. Sometimes the best path forward isn't a straight line." Aurora circled the desk, her movements graceful but predatory. "And what if they refuse even this small step? Then we remind them that the Empire's trade routes could easily bypass both their territories." James kept his voice calm. "Sometimes the best way to get 2 sides to work together is to give them a common problem." The princess stopped, staring at him. "You'd threaten them with economic isolation." "Not threaten. Remind. The difference is crucial, Your Highness." A strange sound filled the room. It took James a moment to realize the princess was laughing. A sound few in the Empire had ever heard. "You humans are surprising," she said finally. "You combine such primitive emotions with such clever strategy." "We've had plenty of practice solving our own impossible problems," James replied. "Sometimes being the youngest species gives us a fresh perspective." Aurora moved toward the door but paused. "Implement your plan, Ambassador. You have my authority. But remember, if this fails, Earth's hopes of alliance fail with it." "Understanding noted, Your Highness," James said, already drafting messages to both species' cultural ministers. After she left, Lord Stone emerged from the shadows. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Ambassador." James carefully arranged his diplomatic seals. "The line between the two is often thinner than we think, Lord Stone. Besides, I haven't told either of you the best part yet." "Which is?" "Both species already secretly trade artwork featuring starstones through underground markets. They're just too proud to admit it. Sometimes the solution to a problem is simply giving people permission to do what they already want to do." The next 3 days would prove interesting indeed. The great hall of the Crystal Palace buzzed with curiosity as James set up a simple wooden board with black and white squares. Word had spread that the human ambassador would be demonstrating an Earth game, and even the most skeptical members of the court couldn't resist coming to watch. Princess Aurora arrived last, her entrance causing the usual stir, but her eyes were fixed on the strange board. "This is your great cultural offering, Ambassador." A board with colored squares. James arranged the carved pieces with careful precision. "This, Your Highness, is chess, a game older than humanity's ability to fly, yet still teaching us new things about strategy and patience." "How quaint," she said, but settled into the offered seat across from him. The court gathered closer, their silver forms creating a shimmering circle around the players. "The goal is simple," James explained, his voice carrying easily through the hushed hall. "Protect your king while trying to capture your opponents." He began explaining the moves of each piece, noting how the princess's third eyelid flickered with interest at the mention of the queen being the most powerful piece. "So the female leads the attack." Aurora picked up the queen, studying its curves. "Yes. In fact, the game became much more interesting centuries ago, when the rules were changed to make the queen more powerful." James watched her carefully. "Sometimes the best traditions are the ones we dare to improve." The princess's first game was over quickly. James had her in checkmate in 6 moves. Her skin flashed darker silver in frustration. "Again," she commanded. The second game lasted longer. The princess proved to be a quick study, her strategic mind adapting to the new challenge. The court watched in amazement as their usually aloof princess leaned forward in concentration, considering each move carefully. "Check," she announced triumphantly after 20 minutes. "Impressive." James moved his king. But not checkmate. 3 moves later, Aurora's triumphant expression faded as James trapped her king. "How did you?" Sometimes victory lies not in the obvious attack, but in letting your opponent think they're winning. James reset the board. "Would you like to try again?" By the 4th game, other court members were asking to learn. James found himself surrounded by silver-skinned aliens, all eager to understand this simple yet complex game from Earth. "Remarkable," Lord Stone murmured, watching multiple games unfold across the hall. "You've accomplished more with this wooden board than a dozen trade agreements." James nodded, observing how Princess Aurora was now teaching the moves to a young noble. Games reveal character. Watch how the princess plays. Aggressive but not reckless, willing to sacrifice pieces for position, but never wasteful. She's learning about humans while we learn about her. "And what is she learning?" Stone asked. "That humans understand the value of tradition while embracing change. That we can be both simple and complex. And most importantly, that we view interaction as an opportunity for mutual growth, not just competition." The evening stretched on, the 3 suns setting one by one outside the crystal walls. What had started as a simple demonstration had evolved into an impromptu cultural festival. Some court members had brought out their own traditional games to share, creating an atmosphere of genuine exchange. Princess Aurora approached James as the gathering wound down. "Your game has caused quite a stir, Ambassador. Tomorrow, half the court will be demanding their own chess sets." "Then it's fortunate I brought several as gifts," James smiled. "Though I suspect your artisans will soon be creating sets with their own unique style." "Indeed." She paused, studying him with all 3 eyes. "You chose this game deliberately, didn't you? Not just to teach us, but to learn about us. Every interaction is an opportunity for mutual understanding, Your Highness. You're more subtle than you appear, Ambassador Walker." She turned to leave, then added, "I want another game tomorrow. This time, I intend to win." James bowed slightly. "I look forward to it, Your Highness." As he packed up the chess set, James reflected that sometimes the simplest moves could bring about the most profound changes. The game was just beginning. The grand diplomatic ball twinkled like a living constellation inside the Crystal Palace. Beings from 100 worlds danced and mingled beneath floating lights that mimicked distant stars. James stood near a crystalline pillar, watching Princess Aurora hold court among her admirers. Your diplomatic approach has been most unconventional, Lord Stone said, materializing beside him. But effective. The princess has asked about Earth customs 3 times today alone. Before James could respond, his trained eye caught something unusual. A servant moving too purposefully, hand hidden beneath a tray. Years of diplomatic training had taught him to spot the signs. The explosion came seconds later. Crystal shards rained down as the ceiling fractured. Panic erupted. Through the chaos, James saw the servant aiming a weapon directly at the princess. Time slowed. His body moved before his mind could process, years of Earth's diplomatic protection training taking over. He crossed the space between them in 3 long strides, tackling Aurora just as an energy beam sizzled through the space where she had stood. They hit the ground together, James rolling them behind a fallen column. The princess's silver skin was glowing bright with shock and anger. "Stay down," he ordered, forgetting protocol in the crisis. More explosions rocked the hall. "How dare you comment," she began, but James cut her off. "Your Highness, with all respect, this isn't the time for rank. Those aren't random attackers. They're targeting you specifically." Her third eyelid flickered rapidly as she processed this. "How can you know?" "The explosions are designed to cause panic, not damage. They're hurting the crowd, creating clear lines of fire." James peered around the column. "There, see how they're positioned. Classic assassination formation. We use similar training scenarios on Earth." Aurora's expression shifted from outrage to tactical interest. "What do you suggest?" "They expect you to flee to the secure room behind the throne. It's probably compromised." James quickly surveyed their options. "We need to be unpredictable. Do you trust me?" The princess hesitated for just a moment. "Yes," she said, surprising them both. James tapped his diplomatic badge, activating its emergency beacon. "Then follow me, and whatever happens, act like we planned this." They crawled through the chaos, using the panicked crowds as cover. James noticed the attackers' frustration growing as their carefully planned trap fell apart. "The service corridors," Aurora whispered. "Nobody but the staff knows all the routes." "Perfect." But first, James grabbed a fallen drinks tray, its surface mirror bright. "We need to give them something to chase." He caught the eye of Lord Stone across the room and made a series of quick hand gestures. The old diplomat nodded, understanding instantly. Moments later, a commotion erupted at the main door, a decoy group fleeing with what appeared to be the princess. "Now," James pulled Aurora toward a hidden panel she indicated. They slipped into the service corridor, just as more explosions rocked the main hall. "Your people will notice I'm gone," Aurora said as they hurried through the narrow passage. "That's the point. Right now, there are 3 groups they have to track. The decoy at the main door, the guards heading to the secure room, and us. They don't have enough people to follow all 3. The princess studied him as they moved. "You've done this before." Similar situations, Earth's diplomatic corps believes in practical training. They emerged in a small communication hub, where James quickly established contact with both Earth security and the Imperial Guard. Within minutes, the palace was surrounded by loyal forces. "You saved my life," Aurora said quietly as they waited for the all-clear. "And you did it by breaking almost every protocol we have." "Sometimes survival matters more than protocol," James replied. "Though I apologize for the informality." To his surprise, the princess laughed. "Perhaps some protocols need breaking." She turned serious. "But we still have a problem." "Yes," James agreed. "Someone inside the palace helped those assassins, and we need to find out who." "We?" Aurora raised an elegant eyebrow. "Unless you'd prefer to handle it alone." The princess's triple-lidded eyes gleamed. "No, Ambassador. I think I'd like to see more of these unconventional Earth methods." Outside, they could hear the sound of the attackers being rounded up. The immediate danger had passed, But James knew the real challenge was just beginning. The private study in the palace's East Wing had become their improvised command center. James and Princess Aurora sat surrounded by holographic displays showing personnel records, security footage, and communication logs. The attack was too well coordinated, James mused, studying the three-dimensional replay of the ballroom incident. They knew the guard rotations, the security protocols, even the secret passages. Aurora nodded, her silver skin reflecting the blue glow of the displays. Only someone with high clearance would have access to all this information. Exactly. James stood up and paced the room. But here's what bothers me. Why now? What changed recently that made them act? The princess's third eyelid flickered thoughtfully. Our improving relations with Earth. Possibly. Or, James pulled up a new display showing recent imperial decrees. Your upcoming ascension ceremony. In 3 months, you'll have full access to the imperial security codes. You think someone wants to prevent that? Aurora leaned forward, studying the documents. I think someone's afraid of what you might discover once you have that access. James highlighted several financial transactions. Look at these transfers. Large sums moving through dummy corporations, all tied to members of the High Council. The princess's skin darkened with anger. Corruption in my own court. More than corruption. James brought up another display. These companies all deal in restricted technologies, the same tech that showed up in border conflicts across 3 sectors. Understanding dawned in Aurora's triple-lidded eyes. They're selling weapons to both sides of each conflict, and making fortunes in the process. James nodded. Your father's illness and your upcoming ascension threatens their operation. They needed you gone before you could discover the truth. A soft chime interrupted them. Lord Stone entered, looking grave. The preliminary interrogations are complete. The assassins were mercenaries, hired through a complex network of intermediaries. Dead ends? James asked. All except one. Stone projected a new image. A shipping manifest. The weapons they used. We traced the power cells to a very specific manufacturer. Aurora stood up sharply. Counselor Reed's private holdings. The same counselor who's been most vocal about delaying your ascension ceremony, James added. But he's too smart to act alone. The princess began pacing, her movements predatory. We need proof. Solid evidence that will stand up in an imperial court. We need more than that, James said quietly. We need to make sure the evidence reaches the right people. Reed and his allies likely have contingency plans. What do you suggest? James smiled. Something they won't expect. On Earth, we sometimes use a technique called a sting operation. Instead of chasing the evidence, we let them come to us. He outlined his plan, watching Aurora's expression shift from skepticism to intrigue. It's risky, she said finally. If we're wrong about any of our assumptions, then we'll have revealed our hand and lost our chance, James agreed. But if we're right, we'll catch them all at once. The princess's skin brightened with determination. Do it. Over the next hours, they carefully planted their bait, seemingly carelessly encrypted messages about discovered evidence, a scheduled secret meeting, hints of betrayal among the conspirators. Humans are surprisingly devious, Lord Stone commented as they finished their preparations. We prefer to think of it as creative problem-solving, James replied. The key is understanding your opponent's psychology. They're used to operating in shadows, pulling strings from a safe distance, so we give them exactly what they expect, a shadowy opportunity too tempting to resist. Aurora studied the final arrangements, and when they take the bait, then, Your Highness, James smiled grimly, we spring a trap of our own. But first, we need to discuss how to handle what comes after. Taking down corrupt officials is one thing. Rebuilding trust in the imperial system will be much harder. The princess met his gaze steadily. Then it's fortunate I have an advisor who understands both diplomatic strategy and creative problem-solving. Outside the study's windows, the first of the 3 suns was rising. The next few days would determine not just their fate, but the future of the entire empire. The imperial throne room glowed with a cold light as Counselor Reed and his allies strode in, their silver faces masks of righteous indignation. James watched from behind a crystalline pillar as their trap began to unfold. "This is an outrage." Reed's voice boomed through the vast chamber. "To be summoned like common criminals." Princess Aurora sat on the throne, her posture relaxed but alert. "Criminals. An interesting choice of words, Counselor. We received information about a secret meeting." Another counselor spoke up. "Evidence of treason against the Empire." "Indeed." The princess's voice carried a dangerous edge, though not quite the evidence you were expecting to destroy. James gave the silent signal. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing Imperial guards with weapons ready. The counselors found themselves surrounded. "What is the meaning of this?" Reed demanded, but James noticed the slight tremor in his voice. "Let me tell you a story," James said, stepping out from behind the pillar. "A story about greed, corruption, and a fatal mistake, underestimating humanity's capacity for deception." The chamber's lights shifted, and holographic displays sprang to life around them. Financial records, weapon shipments, and encrypted communications filled the air. "Impossible," one of the counselors whispered. "Those records were destroyed." "Were they?" James smiled. "Or did we let you think they were destroyed? You see, on Earth, we learned long ago that the best way to catch a predator is to make it think its prey is vulnerable." Princess Aurora rose from her throne. "The assassination attempt was sloppy, Counselor Reed. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate? That I wouldn't find the links between your weapons companies and the border conflicts? You have no proof." Reed's skin had turned a pale, sickly silver. "Don't we?" James touched his diplomatic badge, and new holograms appeared, recordings of the conspirators' own conversations, captured during their attempt to retrieve what they thought was incriminating evidence against them. "Your own greed betrayed you," Aurora continued. "You were so eager to cover your tracks that you walked right into our trap." The counselors began to break, turning on each other in panic. Reed, seeing his allies crumbling, made his final desperate move. He pulled out a hidden weapon, aiming it at the princess. But James was ready. With reflexes honed by years of training, he threw a small device, standard Earth diplomatic corp equipment. It burst into a brilliant flash, momentarily blinding Reed. The Imperial guards moved in swiftly, disarming and restraining the corrupted counselor. "Your Highness," Reed spat, his composure finally breaking. "You trust this human over your own people. He's manipulated you." "No, Counselor." Aurora's voice was cold as space itself. "He showed me something you never could. The truth. And the strength to face it." James stepped forward. "You know what your real mistake was. You were so convinced of your own superiority that you never considered humans might have faced and overcome the same challenges you have. Corruption, betrayal, political intrigue. We've dealt with it all. We learned, we adapted, and we survived." The princess addressed the arrested counselors. "Your trials will be public. The Empire will see justice done openly and fairly. A new tradition, perhaps, learned from our Earth allies." As the guards led the conspirators away, Lord Stone approached James. "Remarkable strategy, Ambassador. Though I suspect you had plans within plans." "The best diplomatic solution," James replied, "is one where everyone learns something. The counselors learned not to underestimate humans. The Empire learned the value of transparency. And the princess." The princess, Aurora interrupted, joining them, learned that sometimes the oldest empire can learn from the youngest species. She turned to James. "The Empire owes you a debt, Ambassador Walker." "Not a debt, Your Highness." James bowed slightly. "Let's call it the beginning of a genuine alliance." Outside, all three suns shone bright against the crystal spires of the palace. A new era was dawning for both humanity and the Empire, built on foundations of trust, respect, and the understanding that wisdom can come from the most unexpected sources. 1 month after the confrontation in the throne room, the Crystal Palace buzzed with unprecedented activity. Delegates from across the empire gathered to witness two historic events: Princess Aurora's early ascension to the throne, and the signing of the first comprehensive Human-Empire Alliance treaty. James stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, adjusting his formal diplomatic uniform. The three suns cast a rainbow of colors through the crystal spires, creating an ever-changing light show across the landscape. Admiring the view, Ambassador. Aurora's voice came from behind him. She wore the formal regalia of imperial leadership, her silver skin almost luminescent with anticipation. Admiring the changes, Your Majesty, he replied, turning to face her. Your reforms have transformed the empire in just a few weeks. Indeed, the changes had been swift and decisive. The corrupt council members' trials had been publicly broadcast across all imperial worlds. Trade routes had been reorganized for fairness rather than profit. The military had been restructured to prevent future weapons trafficking. Changes you helped inspire, Aurora said, moving to stand beside him. The old council would never believe it, but we learned more from Earth's history of overcoming challenges than from all our centuries of established protocols. Below them, the Grand Plaza filled with beings from hundreds of worlds. Among them, human diplomats mingled freely with imperial citizens, sharing stories and ideas. Look there, James pointed to a group near the central fountain. Imperial scientists discussing terraforming techniques with Earth experts. A month ago, they would have considered it beneath them to even acknowledge human technology. Aurora's third eyelid flickered with amusement. And there, Earth cultural attaches learning our traditional dances. Though I notice they've added some interesting variations. That's humanity's greatest strength, James said. We don't just adapt. We blend, combine, improve. We take the best of everything we encounter and make it part of our story. The princess, now Empress, turned to face him directly. Which is why I'm about to announce something unprecedented. The Empire is establishing a permanent Human Advisory Council, and I want you to lead it. James raised an eyebrow. That will ruffle some traditional feathers. Let them ruffle. Aurora's voice carried the strength of her new authority. The Empire needs fresh perspectives, new ideas. We've been stagnant for too long, believing our age made us wise. A chime sounded, signaling the start of the ceremony. Before they headed inside, Aurora paused. You never did tell me, she said. Did you plan all of this from the beginning? The chess games, the cultural exchanges, even the way you handled the assassination attempt. Was it all a calculated strategy? James smiled. Would you believe me if I said it was just humanity being human? We observe, we adapt, we connect. Sometimes the best diplomatic strategy is simply being genuinely ourselves. The throne room had been transformed. Where once it was a place of rigid hierarchy, now it held representatives from all species standing together. The signing ceremony itself broke countless traditions. The treaty would be signed not just by leaders, but by scientists, artists, and common citizens from both humanity and the Empire. As James took his place for the ceremony, he caught sight of Lord Stone in the crowd. Quite a change from your first arrival, the old diplomat commented quietly. Change is what humans do best, James replied. We help others remember that tradition and progress can coexist. The ceremony began, and Aurora's voice rang out clear and strong. Today marks not just an alliance between powers, but a recognition that age and youth, experience and innovation can create something greater than either alone. As James stepped forward to sign the treaty, he reflected that this was humanity's true strength, not our technology or our strategies, but our ability to bring people together, to show that differences could be strengths rather than barriers. The Empire would never be the same, and neither would humanity. They would grow together, learn from each other, and create a future neither could have imagined alone. And it all started with a single human diplomat who believed in the power of simply being human.